from the U.S. perspective, but you know, when you adopt the Rubin doctrine of sell out tomorrow for another day of prosperity for Wall Street, that's the Rubin doctrine. Sell out the future of America to make sure that the profits look good for the next quarter in Wall Street. If you do the Rubin doctrine for enough years, and then you adopt the fascist business model after 9/11 with an endorsement with the Patriot Act, you end up destroying the country. And I'm not speaking in silly exaggerations. They've destroyed the country. The too big to fail bank policy of rescues, they saved the banks at the expense of the economy. They wrecked the economy in order to keep the banks going. And now the banks are going to fall and we're going to have a systemic failure of the country.
Yeah, and a massive concentration of wealth into the hands of the few who orchestrated the whole thing the whole time.
Yeah, that's part of the fascist business model that I discuss. I mean, it's just incredible what's going on. You can't bail out the banks like they have. You can't print money to bail out the government like they have. Wage war to defend the dollar like they have, and expect that 2016 and 17 are going to be normal. No, they're going to be breakdown years. We're in 5 years now of QE, which is African. Zimbabwe monetary policy of hyper-monetary inflation, unsterilized, which means they don't drain money out of the system in order to push money into the system to cover the federal debt. They just add more money in like Robert Mugabe did in Zimbabwe. When are we going to wake up, Will, that we're running an African-style policy for the dollar?
Well,
we're not going to wake up until the rest of the world rejects the dollar. And where will they reject it? In the shipping ports. That is the big battleground right now.
Interesting, Tim. So the Venezuela story is could be used as sort of a microcosm example, could it not? I mean, downward spiral there. They've depreciated the currency so bad they're out of cash, and now their main export they can't even export because they have no money, because there's no liquidity.
Well, they're exporting rice and beans, and therefore they're having food shortages. I have a phrase that when you have a severe currency problem, crisis, you want to export everything you can. So they export anything that's not nailed down, and it causes shortages of what they exported.
Right.
And that, I think you call it a microcosm, and I think that's a very good word to use in an example. The United States could face that same situation where we export most of what is made in the United States in order to relieve the trade deficit, which is $500 billion a year. If we have to come up with a new dollar for domestic only because we've lost the global currency reserve status, that's precisely the pressure that's going to have to be alleviated. You can't have a domestic only dollar without an immediate effect on it from the deficits. And it's $1 trillion annual federal deficit, which could, honestly, it could be filled and covered rather easily if they just confiscate all the 401 and all the IRA and all the KEO funds. That's about $1 trillion a year. So then they'd be left with the trade deficit, which is $45 billion a month, rather consistently, which is $500 billion a year, $500 billion. You cannot have a stable currency in that kind of deficit situation. And this is pressure that's coming, Will. It's coming like as certain as tomorrow's dawn. But I think the big story we were talking about before the recording is the silver breakout, which I featured in an article just a few days ago.
You did, yeah. Today is Friday, April 29th, and you had an article that came out this past Tuesday, the 26th, titled "Long-Awaited Gold Breakout," and you went into a couple different formations that silver, specifically silver, has shown. I think a daily and then a weekly, and with a price point anticipation of an $18 silver price breakout. And here we are today at just pennies, literally pennies under $18. What caused you to obviously write that article, that this breakout in the metals